The Big 12 is one of the more challenging conferences to predict. This is a conference that has a number of teams that could be at the top, and we saw that last year. Today, we're going to take a look at every team's win total and see which way we're leaning. Are they going to hit the over or is the under going to hit? And we'll do that for every Big 12 team. We're going to start with the Arizona Wildcats, and this is a team that has a lot of work to do. The over under is set at 4.5. And when you look at this schedule, it really depends on how you feel the offense is going to do. Noah Fafita does not have his top target in Tedero McMillan. He is off to the NFL with the Carolina Panthers. Maybe the passing attack becomes a little bit more balanced. We talked about that in the Arizona preview for this season, and this is a team that, again, has work to do. Brent Brennan has plenty in front of him, and there are concerns about the schedule as well. Now, you do get Hawaii and Weber State right off the bat, but you get right into conference teams with Kansas State at Iowa State. That is not a great way to start, and you're probably starting with 2 losses against those 2 teams. You get Oklahoma State at home. That's a nice one. BYU is a much different team now with a Jake Retzlaff transition. Then you go to Houston and Colorado. You also get Kansas at home. You go to Cincinnati, host Baylor and Arizona State on the road to finish the year. When you look at it, finding 5 wins is a challenge. And there are a lot of concerns with Brennan and where this program is headed. But maybe they have some tricks up their sleeve. The Hawaii and Weber State games feel like they're wins, but they do get Oklahoma State. So that's at least nice. After that, though, it's going to be hard. You're finding that a number of the better teams in the conference, you get Kansas State, Iowa State, Baylor, Arizona State, finding a way to win 3 more games after 2 of your non-conference wins is going to be a challenge. Arizona State was the surprise of the Big 12 in 2024, and it's going to be tough for them to replicate that success. The over-under is set at 8.5, and the schedule does allow for them to prove that they can do it again. Now, you should get off to a good start with Northern Arizona and a road trip to Mississippi State. The Texas State game last year was a challenge for this team. That being said, it is at home this year, so you feel confident that Arizona State should be able to handle business there. After that, you kind of get into a little bit of a gauntlet. You go to Baylor, host TCU, go to Utah, and host Texas Tech. Those are 4 teams that expect to be competing for a conference championship. So that's a tough little gauntlet there if you're hoping to be at the top of the Big 12. Houston should be a much better team. You have a road trip to Iowa State. And then the final stretch is a little bit easier with West Virginia at Colorado and Arizona. Honestly, it kind of depends on how that 4-game stretch goes. Now, this is a team that is in a better place than you can make an argument 3 or even 4 of all 4 of those teams. But it is going to be tough. The road trips to Baylor and Utah will be difficult for different reasons. And this is a team that has a ton of returning talent. So you feel confident that they should be able to handle those road tests, though their road trips are difficult. You should start the year 3-0. And honestly, if you finish 2-2 in that 4-game stretch, you're feeling pretty good. It's going to be tough regardless. That final 5-game stretch is manageable. Now, Iowa State is probably the toughest one there on the road, but Iowa State has a lot to sort out before we're truly going to say that Arizona State might struggle. So right now, I would say I'd lean the over with the talent that this group has coming back, the confidence that they're playing with, and even with that tougher stretch, you feel good about where Arizona State can be at the end of the year. Baylor's over-under is set at 7.5, and we're going to find out pretty quickly if that's going to hit in the first 2 games of the season. Now, obviously, 2 games don't dictate that, but hosting Auburn and going to SMU will tell us the mentality of this team. There are a lot of people who are excited about Sawyer Robertson, Josh Cameron. That is a group that has to be really good right off the bat. Auburn is looking to bounce back this year. SMU ended the year disappointing, but they are looking to make sure that they can get back to the top of the ACC. You're looking at a team that is very motivated. And if you're able to start the year 2-0, that's going to tell us that this team means business. It's also going to help, obviously, with the over if you're going to bet that. Sanford's obviously going to be a win. Then you host Arizona State. So 3 of your first 4 games are against teams that will be extremely difficult. So again, we're going to know pretty quick if this team is a legitimate contender or if there are concerns. Now, the rest of the schedule does provide plenty of opportunities for wins. You go to Oklahoma State, and unless they're better, that should be a game that you can win. Kansas State is going to compete for a conference championship, as is TCU. So those are two tough games there. You go at Cincinnati, UCF at home, Utah at home. You don't have to go to Utah. That's really nice. At Arizona and Houston at home. So the road trips overall are not bad. You get a lot of your toughest competition at home. So that gives you the benefit of the doubt. When I look at this schedule, I think that the Auburn game will tell us a lot. The road trip to SMU is going to be a challenge. I think that honestly, they start the year 1-1. You're going to get a win with Samford. The Arizona State game at home could be an opportunity for them to win a big game, but Arizona State is going to be tough to beat. So say you're sitting at 2-2 at this point. You just have to get 6 more. Oklahoma State should be a win. You probably have the ability to beat Kansas State or TCU. I give you 1 win there. Cincinnati is a challenge when you're going to Nippert Stadium. So at this point, if you're going 2-2 and you find a way to win 2 of those next 4, then you're going to have obviously opportunities for 4 wins at the end. Maybe, UCF is going to be near the bottom. Utah should bounce back. Arizona and Houston are teams that you feel confident you should be able to beat. So that remaining schedule gives you opportunities. If I'm going to lean, I probably lean the over. There are some things I think Baylor needs to sort out, but I trust what Dave Aranda is doing on defense, and I trust what that offense can do this year. BYU is an interesting team. Obviously, the Jake Retzlaff situation is kind of what everybody's talking about. But the 6.5 win total is going to be an interesting one to pay attention to. You should start the year 2-0 before you go to ECU. That is a tougher than expected road game, especially with Colorado right after that. ECU will give them some challenges. I do think that BYU should be able to handle that game. They are the more talented team, but ECU is a tough team to beat. But you should still start 3-0. The Colorado game, I think, is another tough test. But this early schedule gives you opportunities to wins even while you're trying to usher in a new quarterback. West Virginia and Arizona, kind of the same thing. You should be able to win those 2 games. And if you're able to start the year undefeated, then you're looking at 1 more win needed for the final 6 games, which granted, that's going to be difficult outside of the UCF game. But if you win the games that you're favored in, this team should go 7-5, no problem. The part that's going to dictate how successful this year is the stretch of Utah, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, TCU, and at Cincinnati. If this is a team that's going to surprise people, those are the games that they're going to have to win. The 3 road games there to Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati are all going to be challenging. But I do think that this team can get to 7-5. I would lean the over here, even though you don't have your starting quarterback. This is a team that doesn't really rely on one player to do everything, so you feel confident about the over here. Cincinnati is a team that could go either way. When I did the deep dive on the Bearcats, this is a team that I saw that could potentially go 9-3, 8-4 if things go really well. You could also see a team go 5-7, maybe 6-6. I think that at a minimum, they're really going to be 6-6 realistically. The Nebraska game is going to tell us a lot. If that is a game that they can pull out a win, then you're feeling confident about the remaining schedule. Even if you don't, you have Bowling Green, Northwestern State. You're going to be 2-1. A road trip to Kansas could be intriguing. That's definitely a game that Cincinnati could potentially win, but Kansas now has a home field advantage again, so that'll be interesting. Iowa State will be tough as well, but then you get UCF and Oklahoma State. Those are 2 games that should bump you up to 4, maybe 5 wins at this point in the season. And then you do get Baylor and Utah after that. So you're in a little bit of a bind there. That's going to be tough. But then you end the year with Arizona, BYU, and at TCU. You get some intriguing games at home. And honestly, I think that Cincinnati should have a lot of success at home. If you're able to win, honestly, when you look at it, Bowling Green, Northwestern State, Iowa State, UCF, Baylor, Arizona, and BYU, plenty of winnable games. I like the over here. If Cincinnati is able to take even just a slight step forward after going 5-7 in 2024, this will be a really fun team to watch in 2025. The Colorado Buffaloes over-under is set at 5.5 wins, and Colorado fans are probably hammering the over right now. I think that they think they're going to be a better team, and in the deep dive that I did, that was very much the case. Colorado is very confident with Deion Sanders running the show, and it's easy to see why. And this schedule does have winnable games on it for sure. So it's not like there's unrealistic expectations about their ability to, I mean, hitting the over is just 6-6. And honestly, that might be what it is, but I think that there are plenty of opportunities for this team to exceed expectations. You get Georgia Tech at home to start the year. That is a tough way to start your season. That being said, after that, you get Delaware at home. You go to Houston, host Wyoming, and BYU. After that, you get a tough 3-game stretch where you go to TCU, host Iowa State, and to Utah before you end the year with Arizona, at West Virginia, Arizona State, and Kansas State. When you're looking at games that you feel good about Colorado's chances, Delaware, Houston, Wyoming, Arizona, and West Virginia. Those are 5 games that you feel good in, and you just have to find, obviously you have to win those games, but you have to find one potential upset or one game that people maybe aren't expecting you to win to get to that over. I think that if I'm leaning one way, I'd lean the over. I think Coach Prime deserves the benefit of the doubt at this point. And even if they do go 6-6, it probably feel disappointing, but the over at least hits. Then you go to the Houston Cougars. This is a team that is hoping to bounce back in a massive way under Willie Fritz in year 2. You get Stephen F. Austin and Rice to start the year, so you should be sitting 2-0. The Colorado game will give us an idea of where this team actually stands. Again, the Buffs, you feel confident they could hit the over, but a way for that not to hit is for Houston to beat them here. And early in the season, it's going to be intriguing to watch how this team shapes out. You also go to Oregon State. That's a tough game, purely just going on the road. But I think Houston feels confident about their ability to win that game. A 4-0 start would be very intriguing here. The over-under is 6.5. And it's honestly, it's easy to see why you could potentially see the over hitting. That being said, the Colorado game will be tough. You then, after Oregon State, get Texas Tech, but you do get Oklahoma State, Arizona. You also see West Virginia and UCF later in the season. But also later in the season, you see Arizona State, TCU, and Baylor. So if you're looking for the over to hit, you're looking at Stephen F. Austin, Rice, Colorado, Oregon State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, West Virginia, and UCF. Those are 8 games that you could see Houston potentially winning. And even if you lose one of those, you're still sitting at 7-5 in the over hits. I trust that Willie Fritz will get things sorted out. Betting the over here, it feels a little bit dicey, if you will. It feels a little bit uncertain. I think that this is a team that a lot of people expect to do good things. I still would lean to the over, but I think that it's still kind of hard to predict what this team will actually do. Iowa State sits at 7.5 as we enter the 2025 season, and it is going to be fun to see how this team actually plays. Again, the Big 12 is so uncertain right now, and getting to 8 wins is a challenge for a lot of teams. You start the year with Kansas State in Ireland. That is a tough one to start, and I don't really like it, but it doesn't matter. You also then get South Dakota at home before you face Iowa. So those are 2 different games that are, I think, going to be kind of challenging. South Dakota had a lot of success last year, but they lost quite a few pieces. So Iowa State should be able to handle business. Iowa is going to be tough. Then you go to Arkansas State and Arizona. You get at home, so you feel pretty good about your ability to get. Honestly, at this point, you should be sitting at 3 wins at a minimum. You then go to Cincinnati and Colorado before hosting BYU and Arizona State. Then you end the season at TCU, hosting Kansas, and going to Oklahoma State. So you do have multiple bye weeks this year, and it's going to be fun to see how this team bounces back from the Ireland game. Right now, there's a lot of questions in the passing attack. Rocco Beck obviously returns, and the tight end position appears to be set, but the wide receivers are kind of a question mark right now. And when you lose 2,000-yard receivers, that's going to happen. If you're betting Iowa State right now, getting to 8 wins could be a challenge. Now, I think this team can beat Kansas State, but I don't know. Kansas State is going to be so difficult. You're beating South Dakota. Iowa is a rivalry game. Anything could go anyway that game. Arkansas State and Arizona should be wins. So again, say that you're sitting at 3 wins there. Going to Cincinnati will be a challenge, and as well going to Colorado. But I do think they win at least one of them. So you're sitting at 4. Hosting BYU, I think that's going to be a win for Iowa State. If Retzlaff was running the show. Not that he's a huge difference, but you feel a little bit more confident. Also, the fact that this team gets 2 weeks to prepare for the Cougars. I really like what Iowa State can do there. That's 5. Hosting Arizona State will be a challenge, but it is at home. At TCU, if TCU is the real deal, that's going to be tough. If not, then you're looking at win number 6 right there. Kansas and Oklahoma State are definitely winnable games. So even if you are struggling a little bit, you do have the ability to get there. I think that overall, this team should hit the over. I honestly might be leaning more towards the under right now. To be completely honest, there are just so many games that I'm not sure about. And especially early on when you face Kansas State and Iowa, if you're starting the year 3-2 with those first 5 games, it might be tough for them to find 8 or more wins. Now, Kansas kind of their success really hinges on the health of Jalen Daniels. What he's able to do in terms of staying healthy will play a huge role in this one. Fresno State and Wagner should be wins right off the bat. A road trip to Missouri will be a challenge. Now, that is a game to keep an eye on. If Jalen Daniels is able to do what he does best, that is a winnable game for Kansas. Now, there are some things they need to sort out, and Missouri is going through a transition as well, but if it really depends on which team's more prepared for that opportunity. It's also a road trip, so right now I give Missouri that win, but keep an eye on that one early in the season. You then get West Virginia and Cincinnati at home. I like what this Kansas team could do, but I do see that maybe going 1-1. So you're sitting at a 3-2 record to this point. You go to UCF. Kansas should have a lot of fun with that one, unless UCF is much better than expected. Then you go to Texas Tech right after that. That's a tough one. You host Kansas State. Kansas State gives them all sorts of troubles, but it is a rivalry game, so keep that in mind. You also have 2 weeks to prepare for that Kansas State game. You then get Oklahoma State and Arizona back-to-back before finishing the year at Iowa State and Utah. If honestly right now, because I don't know how healthy Jalen Daniels can stay, if he stays healthy, the over is going to hit. I feel confident in that. If he's not, I trust that this team is going to get back to a bowl game, but I would stay away from this one. And Jalen Daniels is great. I hope he has a great year. But in terms of if you're trying to make a financial decision on that, I don't think you're going to want to bet that Jalen Daniels stays healthy an entire year. If he does, you just get to watch some really exciting football. But if not, it could be tough for them to hit the over. But I do trust that they're going to get to 6 wins. Kansas State, like a couple other teams in this conference, is looking for a big season. 10 wins is definitely on the table. I feel confident in this team. It's just going to come down to how confident I actually will be. And you start the year overseas, that's a tough challenge for many different reasons. You then get North Dakota and Army at home. That Army game is going to be a challenge, especially when you go overseas, you come back, you play an FCS team. There's going to be some struggles. You're not going to lose to North Dakota, but there will be some struggles. Then you have to almost reshape your mind to face a triple option team. That is a tough way to start the year. The nice thing is that the first 5 games give them 5 winnable games. I do think that they start the year 5-0. I think I like Kansas State right now over Iowa State in Ireland, but we've seen some weird things happen overseas with college football games. So you just never know, but 5-0 should be a start with Arizona and UCF starting conference play after the road trip to Ireland for that neutral site game. You then go to Baylor and host TCU in back-to-back weeks. You then go to Kansas for that rivalry game before hosting Texas Tech. You go to Oklahoma State, to Utah late in the season, and then host Colorado. Finding 9 wins is, I think, easy to do if you're confident in Avery Johnson, if you're confident in this team and what they're capable of doing. I would lean the over here and feel like I'm leaning over on a lot of these, but I think that Kansas State should be able to get to 9 wins. And if they're playing really well and Avery Johnson takes a step as a passer, you're looking at a team that could win at 10 games for sure. Oklahoma State's kind of tough to decide right now. What is this team going to look like? It's pretty much a brand new roster, and we just don't know what this team will actually be. You do trust that they're going to start the year 2-1. They're not beating Oregon, but they're going to beat UT Martin and Tulsa. After that is really going to come down to which teams near the bottom of the conference are they able to beat? Your opportunities come against Arizona, Houston, UCF. If you win those 3 games, the over hits. Honestly, right now, until further notice, I'm staying away from this, honestly. I think that I'd lean the under right now because there's just so much uncertainty. This was a team that had a lot of struggles in many different categories last year, and unless they've sorted those things out, I don't know if I trust Mike Gundy to turn things around. If he does, great, and it's going to be fun to watch, but right now I'd stay away from this. TCU's over-under is set at 6.5, and we're going to find out pretty quickly if that's an over if they play really well against North Carolina. Playing against Bill Belichick and that defense will provide a ton of challenges. And a North Carolina team with Belichick that has time to prepare for TCU could be difficult. Now, Josh Hoover is going to be one of the more exciting quarterbacks in college football. That is going to tell us a lot about him and this offense. You then play Abilene Christian before you host SMU, another challenging game. And then, oh, by the way, you go to Arizona State. So 3 of those first 4 games are going to be a challenge. That being said, you have an opportunity to still shake things off. You do have to face quite a bit of talent in terms of teams that are ready to compete for a conference championship because you do face Kansas State, Baylor, Iowa State. You have teams that are going to give you plenty of difficulty. Your road trips aren't exactly easy by any means. Going to Arizona State is tough. Going to Kansas State is also tough. West Virginia is going to be a team near the bottom of the conference, but that is a tough environment, and Rich Rodriguez is going to have his team fighting really hard. You also then go to BYU late in the season. That is a different atmosphere as well. Now, some of the home games give you a little bit of a break when you face Colorado, Baylor, Iowa State, and Cincinnati. I think right now it is TBD for this team. You like to think that you're optimistic about this team, but Josh Hoover has to figure out who his wide receivers are going to be. And this is a team that I think has some questions. I think it's still a bowl team. I'd probably lean the under right now, but if things sort themselves out and this passing attack is truly electric, then 7, 8, even 9 wins is definitely a possibility. Texas Tech is another team with 8.5 as their win total, along with Kansas State and Arizona State. And this is a team that is all bought in on making the college football playoff and trying to win a national championship. You should get some momentum right off the bat. You should be able to start the year 3-0 before you go to Utah. That road test honestly will tell us a lot about this team and if they're ready for the challenge of making the playoff. After that, you go to Houston and host Kansas before you go to Arizona State. You host Oklahoma State before going to Kansas State, hosting BYU and UCF, and finishing the year at West Virginia. When you look at what this team could do, the talent is definitely there. A lot of the success of the offense hinges on Baron Morton's health, and this is a conference that has a couple of quarterbacks that will dictate the success of this team. I like what this team can do. I think that they're going to be really fun to watch. They have good depth. They have good starters. I'm going to lean the over here because I'm bought in on what Texas Tech is doing, and it'll be fun to see them play this season out. UCF's kind of a tough one to predict right now. Scott Frost takes over for a program that is struggling mightily, and the over-under is set at 5.5. You start the year with Jacksonville State and North Carolina A&T. Those should be 2 wins, but that's when things get a little bit more challenging. You do host North Carolina, but then you go to Kansas State, host Kansas, and go to Cincinnati. A home game against West Virginia will tell us a lot about kind of where this program sits. But then after that, it doesn't get any easier. You go to Baylor, host Houston, go to Texas Tech, host Oklahoma State, and go to BYU. I think right now I'm leaning the under. I want UCF to be good so bad, but I think other teams are in better spots right now. So right now I'd lean the under. I just need to see more before I truly believe that Scott Frost will be able to turn this team around once again. Utah is a team that could be at the top of the conference this year. They're looking to bounce back, and their over-under is set at 7.5. You start the year at UCLA. That will give us a good idea of where this team stands. You're also going to be able to build momentum if you win that game because you're going to have 2 more wins with Cal Poly and going to Wyoming. Even though Wyoming is going to be better than last year, this is still a Utah team that is much better than that team. You then host Texas Tech. That one is going to be a big game, especially if you have an undefeated Utah team going against an undefeated Texas Tech team. That will be a crazy environment, and you like what Utah can do against some of those better teams. You then go to West Virginia before hosting Arizona State, at BYU, host Colorado and Cincinnati, at Baylor, Kansas State at home, at Kansas. The teams that are going to be competing with Utah for the conference championship include Texas Tech, Arizona State, BYU, and Baylor and Kansas State. You get Kansas State, Arizona State, and Texas Tech at home. So 3 of your biggest tests. And honestly, those are the 3 highest win totals in this conference. You get those games all at home. I like that for Utah. I like what that means for this team. And it could be worse. You could be going on the road, obviously, but you do get those teams at home. There's still a lot of work to do for the Utes, but getting those games at home gives you that advantage, gives you the home field advantage, which is a big thing for Utah, and it gives you an opportunity to pull out wins that maybe people don't expect you to. If I'm leaning one way, I'm leaning the over. If Kyle Whittingham can get this team back on track, this is going to be a massive year for this team. Those home games against those 3 that we talked about are going to be big indicators of if the over is truly going to hit this year. And finally, the West Virginia Mountaineers. Over-under is set at 5.5. Rich Rodriguez has a lot of work to do. You start the year with some intriguing matchups with Robert Morris and then a random road trip to Ohio. That's going to be a fun game to watch. And then it's the backyard brawl. That game tells me a lot about where this team is actually going to be. You then go to Kansas, host Utah, go to BYU and UCF, host TCU, at Houston, Colorado at home, at Arizona State, and Texas Tech at home to end the year. There's a lot of work to do, like I said, and maybe Rich Rod can get this team back to a bowl game, but finding wins on the schedule is challenging for sure. Right now, I'd lean the under with West Virginia, but this conference is so wide open. Anything can really happen, West Virginia included. Getting to a bowl game would be a possibility, but it is going to be tough. This is a conference that's all over the place. There are good teams, obviously, and this is a deep conference that's full of talent. So some of these teams are going to obviously hit the under. Some of these teams are going to struggle, and maybe some teams aren't going to meet expectations. But all I know for sure is that this is going to be a fun season to watch once again, and there are plenty of teams that you need to pay attention to this year.